Okay, this class is officially on recording, and we're going to start, like I said, we're going to start talking about requirements, documentation, and process modeling. So I'll start sharing my lesson notes. So just like I said earlier, last time it was requirement gathering, and after requirement gathering, the best thing is to proceed to document your requirement, the requirement together from stakeholders. So what is requirement documentation? So it's a formal written statement that specify what is needed by stakeholders or what a system or project must achieve. It ensures that everyone has a clear understanding of the objectives and scope of the project. So the purpose of documentation is to make sure that everything, the first thing you have interview with the stakeholders, you capture requirement with them, then you document everything you captured from the stakeholders, and even the stakeholders that everything about that project must be captured and documented, and it becomes a valid document within that project. So these are one of the first documents you are going to be producing within the project. So the importance of this requirement documentation is to provide clarity. You need to be clearly documented, ensure all the stakeholders are on the same page. So after requirement gathering and documentation, you must make sure that all the requirements you captured and documented, you share it back with the stakeholders for validation, for them to authenticate it, approve that actually this is what we want or this is what you captured from us. Another important is communication. It facilitates effective communication between the stakeholders and the development team. And we all know what stakeholder we talk about communication between stakeholders, how important via stakeholder analysis is an ongoing activities. So requirement documentation helps to make it clear. Everybody knows what, because requirement analysis, documenting, identifying stakeholders is part of this documentation. Scope definition. Through this requirement documentation, you help you to define the boundaries within the project, trying to understand what needs to be done and what not need to be done, and reducing the scope creep. And is a foundation for testing and validation. It serves as a benchmark for verifying and validating the system or the product. So these are the basic importance why we must have a clear requirement documentation, and like you say, clarity. Then we have different types of requirement documents or documentation or types of requirements. We have functional requirements, and we have non-functional requirements. We have technical requirements. You have business requirements. We already captured that, but we need to elaborate on this here. So functional requirements specify behaviors or functions of the system. Example, system, process, payment. So these are the behavior, how the system behaves. What are the basic features that we can use from a system? Like we see in our CRM system, we're talking about lead. We're talking about a CRM system. We'll talk about lead management. To manage a lead, there is so many basic features that the users must, touch in order to carry out. These are functional or physical. We can see it. This is what we call functional requirement. It provides functions we can see, we can feel. But non-functional requirements are some of these requirements that it exists but is not visible. We can't see it, but we can feel it, like the system performance. The system is not performing well. Security of a system, we can't see them, but we know that it exists within the system. So these are some of the non-functional requirements. These are part of the things we are going to be documented. So when we are capturing requirements, we need to make sure we clearly understand the functional requirements and clearly understand the non-functional requirement, and equally technical requirement. Mainly technical requirement is after capturing the functional and non-functional requirements. All these requirements, at that point, they are still within business. We still call them business requirements. But in order to implement or deliver the solution, transform the requirements into a software or piece of application, we need to transform this business requirement, which is functional and non-functional requirement, into what we call technical requirement. So that is what we call technical requirement. So this is business requirement. Business requirement. Give me a sec. Let me rearrange this so we'll make more. It's going to make more sense when I rearrange it. Got it. Come down. Put it here. So the business requirement is actually the first. So this business requirement can be broken down into functional and non-functional requirements. At this level, they are say high level requirements of what the organization need, and we break them down into functional and non-functional requirements. And then from this functional and non-functional requirements, in order to start implementation, we need to convert these business requirements into what we call technical requirements, where we specify technical specification of the system. At this point, we'll talk about hardware, softwares, platform, and within that, if we're working within agile environment, we will have to break them down into user stories, creating them so they become technical requirements. So at this point, we call it, another name we call it is solution design. That is what this means. And again, within that point, there's we'll start creating other diagrams in order to help us understand this technical requirement, like user stories and acceptance criteria, wireframing, we will transform into mockups, and these are all the technicalities. Anything about that requirement, we need to create all the technical aspects of this requirement, that in order to help the developers understand the requirement very well, because at the business requirement, a lot of developers might not know how to consume this requirement. They can only consume this requirement when it's transformed from business requirements into technical requirement. And once this business requirement is transformed to technical requirement, after that, and building it and it becomes a software, then the business analysts will equally, in order to explain this technical requirement, because the business leaders or some of the stakeholders might not really understand the technicalities here. So the business analysts need to transform it from technical requirement to business requirements. And that is, so you become a gap between, or a bridge between the business leaders and the developers, transforming business requirements to technical requirement and technical requirements to business requirement, so that everybody, all the stakeholders, will be in the same page, whether the requirement is within the technical specification or within the business high-level need or specific. So that is all about types of requirements. Is better we understand it. So by the time we are documenting our requirement, we know where we are going to be classifying our requirement as we are documenting the requirement. Whether the requirements, if we are breaking them down within this business requirement, is it going into functional requirement? Are they going into non-functional requirement like we see here? I've given some examples here. Then we have key elements of requirement documentation. Some of these elements, or the key ones, it must be objective. Your requirement must be objective. What the project aims to achieve. We must clearly state what the project aims to achieve, because this is a document, you know. Once it is approved, it becomes an authoritative document. In government, we call it working document, but here it becomes, you know, a valid document within that project. So you must state the objective, what the project aims to achieve. Scope, there must be boundaries. You must clearly state the boundaries. Then you must have list of stakeholders involved. Then you must specify detailed functions for the system. That is a functional requirement. You must state non-functional specification. You must state all the assumptions and constraints, non-assumptions and any constraints, and then acceptance criteria, condition that the system must meet. One piece of document that can represent all this is project charter. So, because you see, if you've seen project charter, it contains all these we see here. These are a way you can equally we can use a project charter to capture the requirement very well. And once a project charter is being authorized or approved, then the next thing is to assign it, the project, a project manager, and it becomes a working document. Then best practice for writing requirement documentation, it must be clear, very, very clear. Use clear and unambiguous statement. Consistency, ensure terminologies and definitions are consistent throughout the document. And traceability, link requirement to business goals. And then involvement, engage stakeholders during the processes. This is all we have to, you know, it's no longer high level, a bit details about requirement documentation. With this, we can understand requirement documentation very well. Requirement documentation is not something we can just, because this is where you start producing key documents that you are going to be using for this solution. So if you are at this point, if you are not capturing it very well, or the scope are vague, they are not clear, this is where the problems start coming in, and we don't want to see that. So having capture requirement documentation, let's look at business process modeling. So some of these requirements we captured. At times we need to go further to illustrate them in a visual representation for us to understand this requirement very well. Because doing that, when you are trying to capture this requirement, you try to understand a lot of processes, the current process or the future process. These are part of the things we are trying to understand. And as part of the requirement documentation, is key to model some of the processes for some of them that are needed to be modeled. So that is where the process modeling comes in. So business process model is a method for representing company or organization's process, allowing businesses to visualize, analyze, improve their processes. It can help businesses identify inefficiencies, areas of improvement, ensure quality, and align business goals. It's very, very important. Every business analyst, you must know how to do process modeling very well. It's part of the things that we cannot escape as a business analyst. Well, it's not so technical, but it's a bit. So that's one thing we are going to do very soon. The purpose of this business process modeling to present visualization, offer a visualized representation of processes to help stakeholders understand the flow of tasks. Secondly, analysis, help identify bottleneck, inefficiencies, or opportunities for improvement. Then improvement, provide a basis for process optimization or engineering, and communication, enhance communication and collaboration between the team. So it's very good for a business analyst. Once you finish your capturing your requirements, you document them, model the requirements so that you will give everybody that visual effect, so that people tend to understand, or business leaders tend to understand requirement more in a visual representation. So we have common business processes modeling and tools and techniques. We have a UML, that is the Unified Modeling Language. This is a very important language for the business analyst. It's a way the business analysts communicate. Like every profession in IT, majorly they have a way they communicate, and business analysts, the major way we business analysts communicate is through business unified modeling language. That is our language. Just like if you go to developers, they have different languages they are using. We have Python, we have JavaScript, we have PHP, and so many of these are what we call programming languages. But we, the business analysts, what we use is modeling languages. So, and if you go to people like data analysts, they have their own languages as well, such as SQL. So these are different languages. Everybody got their own language, and you have to master your own language. So We business analysts, if you must be a good business analyst, you must have to understand this unified modeling language. So we are going to use unified modeling language to model our processes or model our requirements to give it visual effect or representation. So it's a diagramming method used for modeling software system, also application for business processes. There's so many processes in business, and it's good that once we document all the processes within the business, we model them for clarity. That will help the organization to be seeing, analyzing, and seeing where there is bottleneck, where there is error, where there is omission, where there is duplication. So all these bottlenecks, once you model their requirement, you see all of them and you see how to optimize your processes and improve efficiency within those processes. We have flowcharts. Flowchart is part of the UML, simple diagram that shows the sequence of steps in a process. We have a business process model and notation. Is a standard graphical notation used in creating detailed process map. So we have flowcharts and process map. They are like almost the same thing, but there's a bit of difference. But we use them a lot. It's either we are using flowchart or we are using process map to model our processes. And we have data flow diagram that shows how data moves through the system. So these are mainly for the data engineers. These are the people that uses this a lot. But even the business analysts, at times business analysts, you work as, they will have a lot of business data analysts. You're a business analyst that work on data or try to, so we call it, so it's important. So many business analysts, you need to understand like this data flow diagram, because you are planning such as data migration, planning a project like data migration, you must understand the flow of data from systems. Or if you are planning for an integration project as a business analyst that involves data, you must be able to do data mapping, using a diagram to show the movement of data in this. So you have to understand how data is moving from one system to another, the kind of data that is moving, is it transformed? And these are some of these are not the work of data analysts, and this is called for data engineers and data business analysts. We are going to do all these things practical, all these unified flowcharts. We are going to use, we have used draw.io before. So this time around, we are going to use it to, most of the things we are going to be doing, we are going to be using that. We have draw.io, we have Lucidchart, we have Visio. We're using draw.io because it's free. Some of us, you will know what draw.io is all about. I think we've used it before. Is there anybody who do not know what these tools I'm calling, like draw.io or Lucidchart or Visio? At this point, if you don't know it, you let me know. Okay, all of us know these two because I think we will use it at some point. So we are going to use them to do this modeling, all this business process modeling, flowchart. These are the tools we are going to use to model all the requirements we've gathered. And yeah, but let's finish and If we finish on time, then we'll do. If you don't finish on time, then tomorrow we'll start doing the practical aspect of it. So let's look at components of business process model. In business process model, we have people we call actors. These are various stakeholders that have got something to do within the requirement you are trying to model, how these various stakeholders, the role they are playing within that process. So if you have to first try to understand the actors, capture those actors. Actors, we say stakeholders, these are people or systems involved in executing processes. So it can even be departments. You can capture them as a department. You can capture them as a system, but these are various actors, not only stakeholders as stated here. Then we have event. We have event. These are triggers that initiate or end a process, such as customer request, delivery confirmation. These are what we call events within the business process. We have activities or tasks. These are actions or steps taken during the processes. We have decision points. Our decision points, this is where we take a decision. At times we say yes or no. While we are modeling our processes, we capture them as well. This decision point where process may take different paths depending on certain conditions. Then we have number 5, input or an output, data, information, materials required to execute the process, and what result from that. So example, customer details input, invoice as output. So these are various components we have to try to put at the back of our mind when we're planning to start modeling our processes, our requirements. Okay, let's look at if we're planning to create a process map using this business process modeling. Here are the various steps we can apply. Number 1 is to identify the process, define the start and end point of every process, identify key input and output and primary goal. Secondly, list the process step, identify the major key steps involved in the process, break them down, break down each step into smaller and detailed tasks. Identify actors and stakeholders, determine who is responsible for each part of the process, create a visual representation, use appropriate symbol and notation during your map or during the process, such as flowcharts or business process map notation diagram. Validate the process map, review the process map to ensure accuracy with the stakeholders and ensure potential variation of the process are accounted for. Then optimize the process. Look for inefficiencies or areas that could be improved within the process. That is key steps. Then we'll have what we say best practice in doing this. While trying to model a process, we must involve stakeholders at every point. Try to validate whatever we are doing with the stakeholders, ensure that the people involved in the process contribute to the design of the process. When we are doing a process map, you must understand the people involved within the process. It might not really be the project sponsor at this point. For instance, if you are trying to model a process in sales department, for instance, if you are trying to understand the lead management within the sales department, we have to understand the key players within that process. And all of us here, we know that the key players within lead management will have marketers plays roles. We have sales managers, they play roles as well. We have sales reps, they play important roles. So you have to capture such stakeholders. They must make input. You cannot impose what they are doing on them. You must capture what they are doing from them. That is the requirement we are talking about during the requirement gathering. You capture this from these people. You must include them at this point so that what you captured from them should be what you are modeling. And after modeling, they must validate it. So that's why it's important to involve them at early stage. Early stage means during requirement gathering. Keep diagrams simple. Make sure your diagram are simple and easy to understand as possible, avoiding unnecessary complexity. The simpler the diagram, the better. I've seen so many process map diagrams. You know, some business analysts, they tend to make it so difficult and we are not communicating. The diagram, the purpose of diagram is to make things easier for stakeholders to understand. But some people will start making it complex, saying that a kind of a superiority or expertise. You are not showing any expertise when your diagram is very difficult for. As a matter of fact, when you see my diagram, I don't need to explain my diagram because the diagram, the purpose of the diagram, you are modeling your diagram for layman who cannot even read to look at it and understand what the requirement is all about or what the system is speaking, you are talking about. So, but some people will use a lot of jargon, use a lot of unnecessary complexity, arrow, making it so complex. And I'm not a fan of that kind of. Very soon you'll see one of my diagrams. It's very simple and easy to understand. So the next is focus on continuous improvement. Treat the business process model as an ongoing activity where the process is frequently reviewed and refined. The process of modeling is for constant review and refinement. You keep on improving the processes within the model or within the map you've just. So it's a continuous improvement. You continue to identify inefficiencies, continue to identify bottleneck. That is the process. That is the key reason. It's not a one-off activity where you say, I've just done it and that's it. So if you're working, you continue to optimize the process. In so many companies, the business analyst, their main job is to continue to, capture processes and model them. We continue to capture processes, you continue to document processes, you continue to model processes, you continue to refine processes. So, some call these people process analysts. They don't call it business, but they are all business analysts. Or so you see some people, they call it business process analysts. They are still business analysts, but their specialization is on managing processes, refining processes, optimizing processes, improving processes. And that is what we do on daily basis. So, number 4, ensure consistency with organizational goal. Align your process model with company's broader goal and strategies to ensure that it's relevant. So, conclusively, requirement documentation lays the foundation for any project by defining what is needed from the start of the project, or from the system or the project, the product. And again, business process modeling provide a visual representation of workflow, and help identify ways to improve efficiencies and communication. And these two techniques work together is very crucial for aligning stakeholders' expectations, ensuring efficient workflow, and driving process improvement across organization. So let's look at this case study where we apply, after capturing requirements, we apply process modeling within this. I used Neras.com as an example where we are talking about we're trying to implement an ERP system for Neras.com because of their inefficiency within the finance department. So we try to understand their current process before we understand their future process, and then understand the kind of solution we are going to provide for them. So this process outlines the core financial activities in a company that doesn't utilize an ERP system, highlighting key actors involved. Like I said, actors. So these are the key actors involved here within this process. We'll have salesperson. The salesperson creates sales order, invoice, and collect payments. And then the customer retrieve invoice and makes payment. The purchaser creates purchase order. Vendor receives purchase order and sends invoice. Accountant manages accounts payable and account receivable and reconcile statements and generates report manually. So this is how this company, all this, they are doing it manually because it's paper and pen, and that's how they are doing it manually. So we want to understand this process. Like you are now a business analyst, you want to help this organization to improve their finance activities within the finance department, optimize their activities. Finance department is not a place where things should be done manually, because it's is manual activity within finance department is fraudulent activities, and that should be stopped. So you, as a business analyst, you try as much as you can to help this organization to optimize the process within the finance department. You cannot do that without understanding their current process, the way they manage their finance department, before you can think of any solution you are bringing in. So this is the scenario here. So first, you as a business analyst, you have identified these key actors. They are stakeholders. All these key actors, them here, they are stakeholders. So if you plan to capture requirements during requirement gathering, these people are the people we are going to focus on to understand the key challenges within finance department. You see here, at this point, the finance, the HOD finance, who might be the project sponsor, they've given you the high level overview of what they want to achieve. But if you want to go for in-depth requirement gathering to understand challenges facing that finance department, you have to look for people that have got something to do with day-to-day running of finance department. And these are the people. You look at here, you see, we did not even capture the HOD finance. You see here people that are doing day-to-day. You see companies, this is the salesperson. They push for sales. They convert lead into customers. So these are the salespeople. Then we'll have customers. These are the people that we are processing their payment. These are purchasers, purchase orders. These are people within the finance department. They make purchases, like anything the company want to buy. So anyway, this is the way money comes in, money goes out. When we talk about purchasers within, these are the people that have all the procurement. We want to understand the inflow and outflow of cash. How do we manage it from finance department? We have vendors receive purchase order and send the invoice. All these people involved here has to do with one payment or one purchase or what within the finance department. So you capture them. These are the key stakeholders you have to capture. And after capturing them, you then have to have an interview with them to understand how everybody is doing their job. And then when you are interviewing the salesperson, this is the process flow. You want to understand how things happen. You are trying to understand from this particular person, salesperson. This salesperson will then be telling you how this is what they do. The salesperson creates sales order and documents manually. Specified items, quantity, price, and the customer details. That is what the salesperson do. Then the paper copies are generated, or the information is stored electronically in a separate system, such as spreadsheet. So during the requirement gathering, this is what the salesperson is telling you what they do. At this point, we don't have any system, we don't have any application we're using. This is the way we are doing our work. Just like in our case, all of you know that at this point in NIRAS, we do not have any ERP. That is typically the way we work at the moment in NIRAS. We don't have any here. So if I'm the salesperson, this is what I'm going to tell you. You are the business analyst that want to help us optimize our system. Then this is sales order creation. I've told you how I do my sales order creation as a salesperson, and then how I do my invoice generation as a salesperson. Upon shipment or service completion, the salesperson creates an invoice document. Information is manually copied from the sales order or recreated. The paper copies are generated for physical delivery to the customer, or electronic copies are sent via email. So this is how the invoice is being generated. The salesperson have narrated how they generate the invoice. And then payment collection. They will tell you how they collect payment here. This payment collection. That is the same person, salesperson. You can see here, these have nothing to do with head of department, because head of department, like some of you might just rush to the head of department because they are not the stakeholders that will tell you day-to-day activity. Even if you go to them, they are going to refer you to this salesperson for you to go and capture requirement from them. That is how it's done. Then the salesperson will equally tell you how to collect payment. The salesperson collect payment from the customer through various methods. We'll collect money in cash, check, and credit card. The payment might be received in person, mail, or deposited directly into a bank account. The salesperson might need to chase overdue payments. All of you know that at times, customers where we do sell by installments, some customer can pay or at times you sell by credit. So many companies, they still do grant credit requests to some of their customers, and so many of them will not come to pay on time. So salesperson have to chase some of these overdue payment. Then the payment is now received. Because this payment collection, the payment is now collected, the money is now into the bank account, and then you see another person is taking a button from here, another stakeholder, and the person is an accountant in the account department. The accountant manually record customer payments in a ledger or accounting software. So this might involve recording check received, a deposit made, and outstanding invoices. This is what the accountants, they do. So most of the time in the manual system, the accountant goes to the sales department to pick up all these invoices in order to record them in their ledger or accounting system. And then after recording the receipts from the sales department, they need to verify that these payments within these invoices are real, that they are not fraud. They need to check what is in the invoice, which they recorded in their ledger, and what is in the bank. That is what we call bank reconciliation. The accountant does that. So the accountant regularly download or receive physical bank statement. They manually compare the bank statement entries with the company's record of deposit and payment, which is the invoice within the sales department. Any discrepancies requires manual investigation and correction. This is what the accountant does. Now, payment is made, money has gone into the account department, this money has been verified, and they all the corrected, so the company have money in their bank account. So because the company have money, the company does not only receive, company equally spend in order to keep the company going. They do a lot of overhead expenses, they do a lot of procurement, and this is where another person that plays role in inflow and outflow of money comes in, and the person is purchaser or can be procurement officer. So, and it does that through purchase order. Just like we have sales order creation, we have purchase order creation. Now, the purchase order is now telling you, business analyst, how he does his own job. The purchase order creates a purchase order document manually, specifying item they want to buy, quantity they want to buy, and desired delivery date. Paper copies are generated, or the information is stored electronically if they have any such as a spreadsheet, And then the purchase order is now sent to the vendor. The vendor invoice processing. Now, upon receiving, this is an accountant again. Accountant need to look at this invoice. At times they need to look at this invoice before they release payment for this purchase. Upon receiving goods or services, the company receives invoice from the vendor. Now this order has arrived and you need to pay. The company needs to pay. And who is going to authorize this payment? The accountant. So upon receiving the service, the company receives an invoice from the vendor. It's either paper or electronic. That is the invoice. So the accountant manually enters the invoice detail into ledger or accounting system. They need to verify pricing and other details against purchase order if one exists. So once they verify and make sure that everything corresponds and everything is in order, then payment approval. Depending, at times once this clears, the payment goes out. But at times it requires the approval from the account department before payment can go out. Depending on company policy, some invoices might require approval by a designated manager before payment. The manager physically review the invoice and authorize payment with a signature. So in so many cases, the person that does this is the maybe head of department or designated person, and that's why I put optional. At times is in such a way that once the payment is verified, the payment goes out or you just pay. So the next for the accountants here is payment processing. Once approved, the accountant manually initiates payments to the vendor. The accountant issues a check, makes a wired transfer, authorized online payment if possible or if available. And then reporting, still accountant. The accountant manually generates report by accumulating data from various sources like sales, invoice and customer payment, purchase invoice and the vendor payment, bank statement and ledger. This process can be time consuming and mostly prone to errors when you're trying to write accounting reports. Most accountants, they write all these periodic financial reports. So that is how this is done. You can see this process is labor intensive and prone to error compared if the company have an ERP system that does a lot of this activity automatically. In this process, we'll have data duplication, across spreadsheets and documents, which is common, leading to inconsistency. Manual reconciliation of bank statement is time consuming and tedious. Generating reports requires manual effort and aggregation of data. It is prone to a lot of errors. So you see the way we have documented this process. This is a clear process flow, which is a very clean documentation of a process. We captured, like we said, stakeholders. The first here, we captured the stakeholders involved. That is stakeholder, if you are a business analyst, these are the people you need to interview to understand this process very well. And as we are interviewing them, one by one. You are capturing their processes, aligning them, sequencing them. You see the way it flows. And then you are now understand the problem. After looking at all this, you as the business analyst, looking at all this, you make a brief note here based on your observation already as a business analyst, because you are looking for a solution. You are saying that this is prone to error, duplication, time consuming, and a lot. There is a lot you can help them to improve. It does not end here. The next thing, you can see this thing, it takes time. You see the way we are reading it, it takes time. Some people might not really, it doesn't look so fantastic as for the work of a business analyst. So what do? You apply a process model like this to help give this work a visual representation. So with here, you see, you capture the salesperson, you capture the accountant, and you capture the purchaser here. This is the as-is process, and this is where this process starts. You see, it starts from here, it goes down here, sales order creation, under sales order creation 1.1. You see the way it's making more sense and it looks very neat. This is a process map using this is called swim lane diagram. Process map in a swim lane diagram. We call this swim lane. Swim lane here means different lane for different actors. So these are cross-functional people working together within one process. Everybody's on their lane. That's why I call them swim lane. But you see them swimming from one lane. You see the process swimming from one lane to their other lane. You know, that's called swim lane. And you see here, as this from the salesperson, you swim into the accountant lane. Accountant started, you start modeling the accountant or the activity with the accountant. From the accountant, you swim into another lane for the purchaser or the procurement officer. From the procurement officer, you swim back to accountant, and from accountant, you end the process. That is how this is done. And you've done your requirements documentation and modeling at this point. You've captured the requirements, and during the requirements here, you captured the as-is, the current problem they are having. You try to understand the way their organization or the department is working. That is the first thing before you can understand their problem. Now you have seen it. It's not enough that you just documented it. You need to show where the gap lies. And this is where the requirement analysis comes in. But for now, we are not doing requirement analysis. We are just doing requirement documentation. So it's 8 o'clock already. So let's do some interaction to see how far we've understand this. So tomorrow we are going to do this this document, this flow. We are going to use draw.io to model it so that you people will see the way I do this modeling, and you have to do it and submit your own. So that is it, and this is the time we have to do the interaction before 8:30. So if you have any question, this is the time you can come with any of your questions. As I've been presenting, you should be doing some kind of writing notes if you plan to ask questions. So I'm waiting for your questions. Kenneth, yes.
Yeah, good evening, sir. Good evening, everyone. Yeah. Yes, mine is just a request. Please, I don't know if you can drop this material for us, like maybe tomorrow, so that I can be able to go through it before tomorrow's class, because I need to really go through it and understand the whole concept before tomorrow's class, sir. It's just a request, sir. Thank you.
No problems. All right, Kenneth request captured. Any more questions? Chinyere?
Good evening, sir. I don't really have a question. It's just a reminder. The update document you said you were going to drop for us, the project update document. Thank you.
No worries. I still remember that. I'm asking questions within this. So if you wanted to remind me about that, you can chat me and send me a reminder. Any more questions? Okay, can see we all are comfortable with this, and by tomorrow when we I finish this requirement modeling, I will know how you do understanding by the time you'll be submitting your own documents. So that's it. So in the absence of any other question, I will say Joy. Okay.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
So I want to understand this requirement documentation.
What do you want to understand? So where you want me to start all over again? Where don't you understand?
Sir, I actually don't understand all of it. I want to understand
you on your own.
Of this requirement is needed.
I finished presenting and claim you do not understand anything. I don't get that.
No, sir, it's not that everything. I want to know when you are required to get present this documentation. Is it the business analyst himself will present this documentation when he has finished finding out the problem in this particular department? Okay, this is the problem you people have. Then they will now present this particular department document to the people involved. Is it
you have to be sounding professional at this point. People involved are what? Stakeholders, or use the right terms.
Stakeholders, I mean.
Okay. Can somebody help to clarify Joy? Because all of you have been quiet, means all of you Joy, please put yourself on mute. So now Joy is saying she do not understand when we capture requirements documentation. Can somebody answer this question? I'm waiting. Low. At what stage do we, from all these things we'll be saying, at what stage do the business analysts start requirement documentation? That is very, very unfortunate. I'm very disappointed in all of you, to be honest.
Hello, Mr. Charles. Good evening.
Yeah, Jim.
Okay, I just want to contribute to the question. When we start getting
to answer the question, you want to answer the question?
I want to answer the question, sir.
Okay, good.
So the requirement after the requirement gathering, when we have been able to establish the requirements, then that is when we now document those requirements which we have been able to gather to be able to improve on the process, the system process.
Thank you, Eugene. And that is, we'll have Innocent as well, raising hand. Thank you, Eugene. You are quite correct.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Charles. Yeah, just like the same process we followed in project management, after receiving the business case, the project charter, and understanding the stakeholders, then you have to do a proper analysis of the current state and the current system of the organization by gathering all the necessary information that is requirement gathering as to help you provide solution to the problem that the organization is currently facing, because you cannot offer or provide any solution without understanding what the problem is in the organization. I think that is the essence of requirement gathering, and that is when one needs to start gathering the requirements before the implementation of the solution needed. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, we are still in line. Yeah, you stated when the requirements are being the purpose of gathering requirements. I want to gather requirement. Sorry, but the point you miss is because Joy is confused. Joy do not know when to document requirements. But you are still in line. But Eugene pinned it down that it's a simple. I don't even understand why Joy should ask this question, because it's very simple. I'm not trying to undermine or whatever, but the requirement gathering, we've said that after gathering requirements, you document it in a professional manner, like a business analyst. It's simple. You go to gather requirement, you're having a meeting with a stakeholder, asking question. You are writing it down. Let's say you have a note and a paper, you start, the person will be you'll be asking the person a question, the person will be answering the question on how they are using the system, their challenges with the system, because you want to understand their problem. You document it. So you when we are gathering it, maybe you are using recorder, maybe radio recorder, or you are using video recorder. You record everything. Or you might be using, when you are doing this, maybe you might be transcripting it. After everything, that is raw data. It cannot be consumed. It's not an information. So you need to document it in a very refined way to look presentable. That is requirement documentation. So they can become a document, a working document. That time you are capturing requirements, you are using radio to record, or you are using your phone to record, or you are using like video recording, just like where I'm recording this now. It cannot be presented to the stakeholders. You cannot come to talk about it. Nobody can use it as a document. It's not a document here. It's a raw data. Then you have to refine that data by trying to simplify it, make it look visible. That is documentation. So what is why you should ask such a question? You shouldn't. At this point in our boot camp, you shouldn't ask when, because you can see the sequence. We have been doing this in a very sequential way. So, do we have any other? And another thing is that how everybody kept quiet is alarming at this stage. I expected to see all the hands up trying to answer this question, but everybody kept quiet. It means all of us here, except Innocent and Eugene, do not know when to start requirement documentation, and it's alarming. Okay, well, Joy, you've learned when to do requirement documentation. You heard what Eugene said. Did you hear what Eugene said? Okay, do we have any other question that need to be clarified? Okay. Well, we are progressing. At least few questions have been asked, and within the class, we've been able to trash the questions. So it means that if you have any other question, maybe within, you can put it in the timeline, and we'll see. So a lot of us here are very smart, but another thing that some of us here are very shy people. But I wonder how we are going to do this, because this career path is a customer-facing role. You cannot keep moods as a business analyst, because you are going to ask a lot of questions as a business analyst, and you cannot ask questions by keeping mute. It's a customer-facing role. So if you don't know how to talk, go and learn how to talk. If you are shy, it's time you start working on that weakness, because it's not possible. If you can't talk within your classroom, your classmates, even your instructor that you've known for all the time, is it when you start work newly, people you are not familiar with, is that when you will become an orator? This is the time you have to start working on that. You know, now you see so many of us here, we keep quiet. We look like we don't talk. Immediately after the class now, you go to the various group, they will start chatting like parrots. So that is you people. All right. Thank you for joining, and see you tomorrow.
Thank you, sir.
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 Yeah.
Appreciate you.
Good morning, Mr. King.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.